everyone, this is your boy Feltouch here, and welcome back to another episode of my Manchester City Blue Monday podcast, the final episode of the 2016-17 Premier League season. It's been a roller coaster season. I describe it as being a swings and roundabout situation, but in today's podcast we're going to be discussing the recent fixture against Leicester City, as well as looking ahead to the next couple of games against West Brom and also Watford away from home on the final day of the season. So I'm recording this on the Sunday rather than the Monday, so unfortunately there may be some news which come out of City on the Monday which I may have missed, so apologise if that's not included in today's podcast. But we've got a lot to talk about, and first we'll talk about the Leicester City game at the weekend. Now last week I predicted us to lose 1-0 and I wasn't pretty wrong about that, and I felt that we would lose because I felt that Leicester City would just be so dominant on the counter-attack and absolutely destroy us in a similar way to what they did away from home, and I couldn't have been further from the truth in that first half. You know, last year I was very critical of the way City and lots of other teams approached their games against Leicester. I thought that teams needed to be a lot more resolute, just sit a bit deeper, not necessarily have to go on and take them on, because I saw that a lot of the times if you just sat back and let them try and attack you, they're terrible in possession. And at the weekend, in the first half, it was completely the opposite. We absolutely battered them in terms of possession. They had about one or two shots the whole first half, and we really did dominate the entirety of the play. We had so many chances. I thought Schmeichel did pretty well in that first half. Got to say, his distribution was absolutely sensational throughout the entirety of the game. But we came out with an unchanged team. Very attacking. Sergio Aguero back on the bench after an injury, despite lots of rumours every single time he's on the bench because he's such a big player. People think he's unbenchable, but the reality of the situation was he only came back to training about 3 days ago, so it's not really all too surprising the fact that he was on the bench, but it's good to still see him back after a couple of weeks out. On top of that, Gabriel Jesus looked very, very bright, looked going forward. The whole team looked really, really bright. I mean, we've got a massive future ahead of the attacking front three of Sané, Sterling, and also Gabriel Jesus. Also, David Silva was looking very, very nice in that midfield, and eventually we got the goal courtesy of David Silva. And there was a lot of controversy about this first goal, and it was offside. I think, despite what Manchester City fans are saying on Twitter, on social media and stuff, the reality of the situation is an offside call, and it was wrongly given by Bobby Madley, but it was an incredibly tough decision, I have to say, in favour of the linesman. And the Leicester City players did make a massive complaint about it, and perhaps it should have been ruled out for offside, because the rules state that if a player is is active in the play, despite him not being in line with the goalkeeper, he wasn't blocking the goalkeeper's view in this circumstance. I don't think Schmeichel can use that argument, but he did make an attempt to play the ball from an offside position, and that is an offside decision, which probably should have been given in Leicester's favour. We saw earlier on in the season, I think it was John Stones scored against, I think it was Southampton, and Sergio Aguero made an attempt to head the ball and he was in an offside position, and the goal was rightly ruled offside, and this perhaps should have been the same, but as I said, it was incredibly tough. But Leicester City fans may complain about it, and there's been a lot of uproar on Twitter and social media from Leicester City fans especially. They've been getting all their complaints out, and to be honest with you, I find it rather ironic considering the team which had the most luck in terms of refereeing decisions in the entirety of last season, who had 2 decisions go against them the whole year, had absolutely no injuries, every single thing pretty much went towards them last season. I've never seen a team be so lucky. That's the reason why they won the league last year, as well as the fact that every other team in the league last year was seemingly very, very crap compared to them, and they just seem to get fairly lucky. That's my response. It was a freak season last year for Leicester. But moments after the offside decision and the finish from David Silva to put us 1-0 up, Fernandinho was fouled in the box, and for me, it was a stonewall penalty, but Bobby Madley, after probably having all the complaints against him, I don't feel like he felt he could give another decision against Leicester, so he waved it away, and in my personal opinion, I thought that was a penalty. So Leicester may think they were harshly done by for the first one, but they got away with it moments later when Fernandinho went down in the box. On top of that, we got a very, very lovely penalty thanks to Yohan Benalune. That was an absolutely fantastic challenge, son. Leroy Sané, when he gets in that box, he is absolutely deadly. He is so quick, and I saw the other day people talk about his pedigree, because his mother is a gymnast, his father was a professional footballer, and he seems to have somehow got this combination between the two in terms of his physicality and the way he's just able to glide past people. He's a fantastic footballer. When I watch him play, He really does perhaps remind me of a younger Ronaldo in a sort of the way he takes on players. Probably not as skillful as Ronaldo was when he was around the same sort of age, but he's a very, very good footballer, and hopefully his finishing can perhaps improve a little bit, because he got into quite a few good chances, but his finishing perhaps let him down at times. But then he came into the box, won the penalty. It was at first seemed like Yaya Toure was going to take it, but Gabriel Jesus, what a fantastic penalty that was. I mean, he took that penalty against a very experienced goalkeeper like Kasper Schmeichel. It does always surprise me when I watch Kasper Schmeichel's play, because I remember when he was playing for City in a City shirt, and he seemed so small. And now he's very, very thin. He was a small little goalkeeper, and now he's a bit more of a commanding presence in the box. But even him, a good quality goalkeeper, wasn't able to get down to that fantastic penalty from Gabriel Jesus, and he gets yet another goal in a Manchester City shirt. He is a massive, massive talent. I know it was a goal from the penalty spot, but the whole game he looked pretty lively in my personal opinion. Very, very decent, held the ball up pretty well in the game, and he's very, very clinical in the box when the ball actually comes to him. On top of that, Leicester City, from that point on, it just seemed to go completely in their ascendancy. They scored from a free goal. That's what I like to consider it as. One of our players slipping over in the box. You saw Otamendi go down. It's water in that pitch again, I'm telling you. Some of the players at City, they just don't know how to wear the right boots. It was a great ball in, I've got to say, from Albrighton, and it's a lovely, incredible finish from Okazaki, a player who just seems to really, really work hard. Okazaki is a footballer. He doesn't really score all too many goals, but when he does, that was a fantastic finish from him. And Caballero gets a hand to it, but it was so strong he wasn't able to push it out. But in reality those sort of balls should never be able to get in the box. I thought, once again, the fullbacks were fairly poor at the weekend. Fernandinho isn't a right back. On the top of that, Gaël Clichy's a person who's been pretending to be a left back for a top Premier League team for the last 3 seasons, I think. He was absolutely shocking in this game, and I'll go on to talk about Clichy a little bit later on in the game. But then it all just seems to change. I don't know why. The mentality just dropped. Guardiola set the City team up in exactly the perfect way. We absolutely battered them. And at 1-0, 2-0, you're thinking, well, at this stage, City could really go on and score 3-4 goals. It's more about how many goals we go on and win this game. And then they scored, and it gets their heads up. And at that stage, we just seem to let ourselves down. We've done it so many times this season. I remember West Brom away earlier on in the season. We went 1-0 up in that fixture, and from that point on, our heads just seem to drop. I don't know what it is. There's some sort of mentality issue perhaps in the side where we're getting complacent at certain times in the game. Perhaps Guardiola needs to make a substitution a bit more earlier. I think yesterday he probably should have brought De Bruyne off a lot earlier. I didn't think De Bruyne went off. He was pretty poor in my personal opinion yesterday. He has massive fluctuations in his form at the moment. I think perhaps at times when he brought Zabaleta on at right back, I think maybe we should have perhaps strengthened the midfield a little bit more. That's the sort of game where you should bring Fernando on, perhaps just let him control the game a bit better than what we did. It's all about game management, and I think we let ourselves down a little bit with this game against Leicester. Then in the second half, it all changed once again, as I was saying, and eventually they get themselves a penalty. So with regards to the penalty decision, there's been a lot of controversy, of course, about the actual penalty, but not seemingly all too much about the fact that the penalty was actually outside the box. Now, if you look at the contact on it, the point of contact is made when Gaël Clichy is outside the box, on the player outside the box. And last season, City had a very, very similar incident against Leicester City with Pablo Zabaleta, where if you watch it, it was pretty much bang on the line and no penalty was given for City. And that was at 0-0, and we went on to lose that game 3-1. So it does go to show there perhaps is swings and roundabouts in football. Last year, City should have got a penalty against Leicester, and this year they had a penalty ruled out against them. So as far as I'm concerned, everything sort of equals itself out. And then it came to the penalty itself, and there's been a lot of controversy about the actual decision making in the penalty. And according to the FA rules, if a penalty kick is taken and the kicker touches the ball again before it's touched another player, an indirect free kick is awarded. So there shouldn't be a retake. So it was incredibly unfortunate for Mahrez. And I saw as soon as he hit it that I thought, he's not hit that right, he's hit that twice. And the referee correctly gave the right decision and gives the penalty, completely overturns it, no second take, and City go up the other end with an indirect free kick. And it was completely the right decision by Bobby Madley. And lots of Leicester City fans are saying, well, there's players from Manchester City encroaching in the box and it wasn't enforced. And yes, that is completely true. But if you really want to go off precedence, you can just pretty much type in Jamie Vardy penalty against Bournemouth, type in Jamie Vardy penalty, and I'm sure lots and lots of occasions you'll see Leicester City players encroaching in the penalty area, so that one should have been overturned itself. So if we really want to get pedantic about specific incidents, every single team has swings and roundabouts and things like that happen all the time. So as far as I'm concerned, because of the fact that the contact was actually outside the box, as far as I believe, it was the right decision in the end, and City overall got away with this victory. There was another couple of moments of controversy in this fixture. Fernandinho elbowed Mark Albrighton in the face. Whether it was accidental or not, I believe it was. I mean, it was a fairly strange the way his arms were positioned, but he didn't seem to make the movement towards him like a sort of a Fellaini elbow or a Zlatan Ibrahimovic elbow on Tyrone Mings, so I feel like that was never really ever going to be a red card. Accidents happen in football, it's going to be a physical sport, at the end of the day that's exactly what happened. On top of that, I thought that a couple of Leicester City players were very, very good. Riyad Mahrez is always a very, very massive threat, not only defensively as well at the weekend. He did pretty well, he kept Sané out from one of the balls across the box. On top of that, every single time he came up against Clichy, he seemed to do him, every single time. Clichy was absolutely shocking. His reading of the game is pretty poor, and he seems to have lost a lot of pace which he used to have. He's never been a great reader of the game if you look back at games like Bayern Munich, and last week, just after I praised him, this week he's done pretty poorly. He just let Mahrez glide past him every single time, and his decision making for deciding to take him down for the incident which led to the penalty, I have absolutely no idea what he was thinking. Mahrez was well past him and he decided to stick his leg up at knee height in a position where perhaps there was still cover for City. It wasn't necessarily going to score from that sort of angle. It was a really, really strange decision by Gael Clichy, and I still think that he has to go in the summer in order for the City side to progress. The fullbacks are a massive issue at City, and talking of fullbacks, I had a very, very good look at Ben Chilwell playing for Leicester City at the weekend, and this guy has not featured all too many times. This season Christian Fuchs has been the main left back for them, and I tell you what, as a young English player, lots of teams were in for this lad last summer, including Liverpool, and I think they'll probably have another pop at him because I think this lad is the business. He looks like a very, very good player. He's quick. He only got done a couple of times, and that was because he was up against Sané and Sterling, who were just absolutely rapid. But it wasn't just that. It was the way he read the game. He was very, very good in terms of his conviction, and his challenge I thought were very, very decent. And also getting forward. He seemed to like to bomb on a lot, and I quite liked the way he played in the entire fixture. For someone who's a very young English player, and we need to look at bringing in more English players into Manchester City, especially because we are a club at the weekend where I don't even think we had one English player even starting the game at the weekend, apart from Sterling. He's literally the only one, and we have to be wary of the FA's rules where you have to have a certain number of homegrown players, and Clichy at the moment fills one of those quotas. For example, Fabian Delph as well. There's quite a few players at City, including someone like I think Bakary Sagna might even qualify. So at the moment, if those players are leaving City, you've got a big job to do in the summer. We can't necessarily be bringing in lots of foreign imports. We have to be looking at bringing in perhaps more homegrown players. And for me, I thought Ben Chilwell had a fantastic game. And you never know, a couple of years under Guardiola's wing, perhaps he could be becoming a very, very decent left back. And I think Leicester City have got a great player on their hands there. For the rest of the game, though, I think Sané deserves some praise. I also thought Vinny looked okay at the back again. Caballero wasn't too bad. I thought the distribution of Kasper Schmeichel was absolutely excellent. It really goes to show perhaps how much he's improved since when he was at City as a young lad, and perhaps maybe Guardiola should perhaps go in for him. He's not a bad shot stopper. I think he's always a very, very decent goalkeeper. Whether he'd come back to Manchester City, I imagine he's a Manchester United fan at best, so whether he'd want him to come back or not, I don't know. But nonetheless, very interesting game of the weekend, and a massive 3 points which helps us leapfrog over Liverpool. We've still got a game in hand, and that is the fixture against West Bromwich Albion this week. But before that game, there was huge news at the weekend that Pablo Zabaleta has announced that he will not be signing a new contract, therefore bringing an end to his 9 years at Manchester City. And Pablo will always go down as a Manchester City legend. Unfortunately, he's not got that extra year where he would definitely at the end of the year get himself a testimonial, and he completely would deserve it. He's been one of the best servants to Manchester City Football Club. I remember when he came in, because we sold Vedran Korluka, and at the time I thought it was a bad decision. I thought Korluka had a fantastic season at City, and for us to be selling him, I thought we have to bring in a decent player. And Zabaleta came in, and he struggled at first when he came to the Premier League. He didn't really seem to adapt to it. I remember people being a bit confused by the decision and calling him Pablo Zabaglione. I think that was my mum who called him that by accident. And who would think that all these years later that Pablo would become such a resident Mancunian? He's one of our own sort of thing. He's just an absolute legend of City. But unfortunately, I think time always has to come to an end. He hasn't been up to his best as of the last 2 seasons, unfortunately. He's sort of not got the pace anymore, and I'm sure he'll do a fantastic job for lots of other Premier League or teams all across the world. We'll always remember how great a contribution Pablo Zabaleta has made at Manchester City, but unfortunately we've got to move with the times, and every single time we have a good player, things always have to eventually come to an end, and we're going to see a few changes in the next couple of years at City. We're going to be seeing Yaya Toure perhaps leave in the summer. We're going to see lots of other players who've been at City for a number of years perhaps change. It's that old guard churning into the new guard sort of idea, and unfortunately Pablo Zabaleta is such a great player he is, and I'll completely miss him. He's a fan favourite, he's a really lovely guy as well, and hopefully City can replace him with a player equally a good a servant as Pablo Zabaleta has been to Manchester City. So thank you very much from Blue Moon Podcast to Pablo Zabaleta for his fantastic work at Manchester City, and I wish him all the best of luck in the future. So going into the West Brom game, I want to see massive celebrations for Pablo, but I want to see massive banners, massive celebrations for Pablo Zabaleta, and perhaps Yaya Toure. Collar off to less extents, Jesus Navas even less, Bakary Sagna probably not the same, and also Gael Clichy. I don't know if he's still got the year left on his contract, but I know the other players definitely do. But nonetheless, thank you very much, Pablo Zabaleta. So we go into the West Brom game, and they are in pretty terrible form at the moment. They haven't scored a goal until last week against Burnley, where they drew 2-2 since a long way back in March, in the 18th of March. So they really have been struggling in terms of form. But saying that, watched the Chelsea game the other day, and they are still a very big threat. Salomon Rondon is a big boy going forward. I went to the West Brom game earlier on in the season. They're a very organised team, and when you look back at the results throughout the season, they've taken a lot of big scouts throughout this season. They drew against United away from home. They've beaten Arsenal. They've beaten Arsenal in a very convincing manner. I think they're a decent team when they play at home. They've taken a lot of big teams by surprise perhaps at times this season. Tony Pulis is always very organised, but saying that, West Brom will come to City in a number of years in the past and have just been rolled over. So hopefully in a similar manner, because we've got something to play for and they don't, I'm hoping that we'll be able to turn them over. You never know with City. We always like to make things difficult, as evidenced by the Leicester City game the other day, but hopefully, despite the fact that they played well against Chelsea, Tony Pulis wanted to cause an upset, stop them from winning a league at the end of the day, which has now been confirmed as Chelsea being titles champions. They completely deserve, really. They've been the best team in the Premier League by a country mile this season, and at the end of the day, it's what happens in football. If you don't win your games, and Chelsea have just been able to completely steamroll teams, even though at times they haven't played well, that's where we have made our mistakes this year, where we have played well at times, but not got the results, and that's the difference which we need to make into going into next season. But still, West Brom, I'm hoping we'll be able to trounce them during the week. Whether we will see a Gabriel Jesus and Aguero partnership up front, I'd love to see, but there's also questions as to whether you do change the team, because in the first half we looked pretty good the other day. Pablo Zabaleta, I'd love to see him starting in the week. We'll have to see. They'll probably play their 5 at the back systems. So they're difficult to break down, but hopefully we've got enough quality going forward in order to unlock the door, which is their defence. And then finally, the last game of the season is a fixture away at Vicarage Road, a fixture against Watford, who again have been pretty dire form recently. They haven't really been up to much. They're pretty much keeping themselves. They're already thinking back to their holiday about as early as March, in my opinion. They've not really been doing that much. Walter Mazzari, whether he's going to be at the club next season, I have absolutely no idea. I mean, they seem to change their players and their managers every single year. They make about 12 signings and they sell about 12 players. They've got a huge squad of players, which most of them aren't any good. It's a very strange football club at times, what's going on at Watford. I mean, they've been swapping players out between Granada and Udinese. Now they've sold Granada. It's just a very strange situation what's happening at Watford really the last couple of seasons, and for me, I think they're definite candidates to be relegated next season. I think people may have thought that this year as well, but to be honest with you, they've just managed to keep themselves just about above the drop zone throughout half the season. I mean, where are they currently sat in the league? I mean, they're doing pretty poorly down in 15th. They've got their 40 points. That's pretty much them guaranteed there for the rest of the season. But, they've got a couple of fixtures under their belts where they've done okay at times. They can score goals. Troy Deeney's always a bit of a threat. I mean, we did pretty poorly against them last year. Had to rely on some late goals to beat Watford. But last game of the season, season. Hopefully party atmosphere, and hopefully it'll confirm us as finishing third in the league and avoiding having to go into the playoff. I mean, we do need to make ground. I mean, we're currently 3 points above Arsenal, who are down in 5th place. Liverpool are on 70 points. They've got a massive responsibility. They've got a game to play today, as I'm recording this on the Sunday, so I don't know the result of that fixture. So perhaps City can go into next week confidence, score some goals, and finish the season in a very, very good light. But hopefully you guys have enjoyed this week's Blue Monday Manchester City podcast, the final one of this season. We'll be talking about the next year's fixtures, and also we'll be talking about signings throughout the summer, so don't be afraid, this podcast will not be going down outside of the Premier League season. Thank you so much for watching and listening in once again. Arrivederci.